All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining and welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar is going to be on leveraging technology for AI maturity, choosing the right tools and platform. I'm Brandon Teegan. I'm excited to be joined today by Ali Migaki from IQ Credit Union, and we're thrilled to continue to walk you through this AI maturity blueprint series. A little bit of housekeeping before we hop into some of the slides here. Just to note that this session will be recorded. We'll share it with you afterwards as well. So if you miss anything, just let us know. We'll also save time for Q&A at the end. But we also want this to be interactive too. And so if there's any questions that you guys have, please just throw those into the chat. We'll ask those as we're going along through here as well. Before we jump in, just let us quickly introduce ourselves. Brandon Teegan, so I lead the strategy and solutions team here at Cresta. I've been working with our customers at Cresta for nearly the last 5 years now. And my focus has been partnering with our customers who are going through the process of evaluating different AI solutions and then helping to devise a plan on how to actually implement those. And my team's core focus is really on how do we help to make sure that there's a strategy in place that allows our customers to kind of maximize the impact that they're getting from an AI solution in terms of the business impact. And so I'm super excited today to be joined by, again, Ali Migaki. So Ali, I'll kind of hand it over to you to give your background as well.
Thanks, Brendan, for having me. Excited to be here. Again, hello, everybody. I'm Ali Migaki. I get to serve as our CXO. So I get to partner with our retail delivery, which includes our 16 branches, 2 contact centers, insurance and investments, and our community impact team. So I've been actually fortunate to been a part of IQ's transformation over the last 29 years, from 200 billion in assets to 2 billion in assets. And today I'm excited to talk about our embarkment on AI maturity as a credit union.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ali. So again, a lot for us to cover. Today, it's going to be predominantly just focused on the technology part of the path to AI maturity. In our overall series, we've already covered the people and the process steps. And then the next section of this webinar series is going to focus on executive level buy-in, what that process looks like. And so again, today we're going to predominantly just focus on the technology aspect, evaluating and selecting the technology in the platform that you use as part of this transformation. So as kind of a launching point for us here, Ali, wanted to first kind of start with this quote that you've shared with us in the past, which I absolutely love. And so you said before, if you don't embrace AI, you'll be left behind. Out of curiosity and kind of just kickstart the conversation here today, what made that kind of true for IQCU, and like why was that something that was top of mind right now?
Yeah, so I obviously embrace that quote because, like we're talking technology, embracing technology is a huge culture shift, right? So our contact center was experiencing a ton of growth, and we needed to find a way to scale efficiently while maintaining that high touch service that our members expect. So really seeing AI as an opportunity to empower our employees, automating the tasks so they could focus deeper on those member relationships. And then from the tech piece too, a better visibility into our call quality, right? What are the trends? What are our pain points to drive strategic improvements across our whole organization?
Awesome. So I think as we think of a little bit of just kind of like how do we take that type of initiative, that type of understanding of what the current state looks like and where the business is heading in the future, and then the process of, okay, cool, how do I go find the right tools to help support us along that journey? I spent some time, and I'll get your thoughts here, Ali, on some of these considerations, but kind of just spend some time putting together some thoughts where this is typically what we've been sharing with our customers along the way as they go through this process of, again, back to your point of, it's not necessarily just selecting a tool. It is more of a larger transformation that is a multi-year journey, right? It's not just, hey, we want these 3 features. What is the right solution for us to go find that has those 3 exact features? This is a multi-year, again, broader transformation where we're predominantly just focused on how do we help scale and grow with your business and your customers as world changes, technology evolves, and the needs of your customers are changing over time as well. So digging into, again, kind of what we typically say here, and then I want to open this up to your feedback as well. The way in which I generally approach this in partnership with our customers is we focus on these 6 key areas. The first of which is around scalability. So when evaluating what the right tool is and what the right partner is, it's really important to just ask, can it scale with you? And the way that I think about this is that, again, there's evolutions in terms of the company grows, contact centers getting larger, there's more volume, there's that aspect. There's also the technological scaling of, okay, great, the contact center today is filled with human agents. The future could have some AI agents in there as well. And so how do you also start to build that foundation and partner with the right vendor who's going to help make sure that that long-term vision of scaling, whether it's resources, volume, or even the human versus AI agent element, is a thing that we're thinking about. So it doesn't require an additional transformation in the future when the business is looking to adopt more and more AI technology. The second piece on here is the integration aspect. And so most companies today have been working with a number of different solutions for a really long time. And so when it comes to integration capabilities, the way I typically view this is that, for one, it just needs to be like integration friendly. And so what that means is, can we connect to multiple CRMs? Can we connect to multiple CCaaS systems? There's also specific data tools that you're using from an insights or analytics perspective. How do we help to make sure that as we have visibility across the contact center in terms of each of those engagements, each of those conversations, how do we not only identify what to do in those conversations, but then how do we power all the other points of the customer journey and all the different tools that you might have in place through our ability to understand and transcribe what's happening in those conversations, identify what the intent was behind those interactions, and so forth. And so I think for this, it's really how do you become integration friendly, but also not necessarily get locked into a single ecosystem in a space that's so rapidly evolving. The next item on here is the agent experience. So I think this is a really important one because there's one aspect which is the agents themselves. So how do we make it immediately add value on day one, right? That it's really hard. I think we forget at times. The agents in a contact center are talking to someone, and we are also trying to tell them to do something at the same time, which can be a lot. And so I think it's really important for us to also like not lose sight of like this is an emerging technology. Every business wants to leverage it. Many companies have started to see the value that it can bring. But we also don't want to disrupt the customer experience or disrupt the agent experience, which will have impacts on customers at the same time. The final 3 items I'll run through here a little bit more quickly. The next is just around the overall customer experience. And so for this, it's in effect, how do you, again, have the right partner, which isn't just those 3 features. It's instead, well, more holistically, how do we understand what is the intent behind that conversation? If someone is calling in, why are they calling in? And if they get resolution on that call, what was that call about? What provided resolution? And what can we do to prevent them from needing to call back for that same topic, or prevent other customers from calling in for those same topics as well? Or if it's a little bit more geared toward, well, what is the right value prop and how do we handle objections and how do we make sure that we're communicating and sharing best practices unique to our business in a way that's more scalable across the team? Making sure that, again, we're thinking about the customers as much as we're thinking about the users and the agents, equally as important there. The final 2 pieces on here, business impact, again, kind of tying it back to my introduction, but it's really important to make sure that there's not only a plan of what are we trying to deploy, how's it going to help, but how do we actually quantify what this impact might be, and how do we continue to measure that over time as well? So developing the business case and making sure that there's a measure of attribution. So once it's up and running, we can help to make sure that we're optimizing it the right way to drive the right benefits or impact that you're looking for. The last piece, security and compliance, super important. Again, emerging technology like AI, you've seen all kinds of questions and concerns about it. And so having guardrails around the technology, having responsible AI policies and practices in place, really, really important So making sure that staying up to date with all the regulatory compliance and standards, that is almost table stakes at this point, but a really important consideration. So that's a lot there of those 6 different components. And again, wrapping what tends to be mini conversations and demos into a single slide here. But Ali, I'll kind of open it up to you for kind of a few questions here. Seeing this, I guess first and foremost, like from your perspective, what were the most important criteria in selecting a vendor? How does it either align with this, or what's potentially missing from this that you would like to add or recommend is for anyone who's going through the process of evaluating tools like AI?
Yeah, so I would say like when we started looking at this, it's been a process, right? It's been probably 3 years of just conversations. And like you said, your next webinar is about ELT buy-in, right? And so you have that whole process of the agent, technology, buy-in, and then just understanding what your challenges are as members' behaviors continue to change, especially in the financial landscape. And so you have competitive pressures, so other FIs that are already leveraging the AI, and we needed to ensure that we weren't falling behind. So I would say that was one of the things that we took in consideration. And then you look at our limited ability to analyze interactions at scale. So the Q&A was done manually, and I would say like a sliver of calls were Q&A'd. And so we didn't even know why our members were calling in. So we didn't even know our pain points. So they're going to be way more visible with this technology to help us understand those common issues and improve processes. So one of the things that we truly believe in is that relationship piece. And so it goes beyond, yes, we're a credit union, we're people helping people. But when we look at vendors, I would say I can talk a little bit about like our disqualifiers. We notice like we really look at the roadmap. Yeah, can you help us today and help solve the problem today? But we want somebody that we're going to partner with that's going to help us and continue to help us, not just in the moment. And so a lot of our vendors that we saw were purely transactional and not engaged as those long-term partners. And then the solutions, they were either overly complex or didn't like flow with our existing workflows. And then one of the things I touched on was our manual coaching. And so the limited ability to provide that real-time AI coaching. So when I look at and would speak to when you're looking for a certain piece of technology and that vendor, relationships matter. You're not just buying a piece of software, you're actually looking for a strategic partner. So someone that's going to evolve with us and not just sell us a product and then move on to the next client. We were looking for somebody that has a clear roadmap that aligned with where we wanted to go, not just where we are today. So we want that roadmap and that vision. Engagement and support is huge. I want someone that's going to be proactive with our business. And so I don't want to be like, oh, Brandon, I heard about this through LinkedIn. How come I've never even heard of that product or that solution. And we want somebody that's going to help us refine what we have today. It's just not like, I'm going to get you implemented and all that's going to go really well. And then you're never going to hear from us again. Scalability is huge, like you mentioned. Can the platform grow and adapt to our future needs? The seamless integration with our CRM system. We are fortunate enough to have our homegrown CRM system, so it's great to hear that you guys are able to connect to that and enhance that product for us. And then, of course, going back to the agent, it's got to have an agent enhanced experience. It can't complicate it more than what they're already doing, right? You had mentioned they're just not taking calls. They're in 3 other systems working through either trying to find the information that they need to give to the member, or they're in your client CRM system, or they're in your core system, or they're in your lending system. So they have so many things to already navigate. We wanted this to enhance it, not convolute it even more.
Those are awesome. A few things that you called out that I think really resonated there. The first of which was your first point was around the constantly changing competitive landscape and needs of the customers, right? Like what we set out to say, hey, on day one when you launch, it's going to be different on day 90 and day 365 and in year two. And so I think that's a really important consideration, right? Where it's not only is the technology changing, but the reality is that like the business and the requirements and what competition is doing, all of that is evolving and doing more stuff and changing things and iterating as well. And so it's really important to make sure that like there's an adaptive strategy of how do we continue to build and learn more as we go. And the second piece that you mentioned around the visibility piece is also where like that becomes even more important, right? So it's understanding and being able to react to based on what's happening in conversations now, how do we devise the right strategy to go about doing that? And then the final piece that I'd call out, I think, is spot on, and we're going to dig into this into the next slide as well. But that partnership piece, right, where it's all of the features are great, but it's going to require not only understanding our business and helping us to build the right solution for it on day one, but helping to also continue to drive best practices, whether it's more tactically, like how do we coach more effectively? And based on what we've learned in our conversations, how do we make sure that we're improving agent performance? The tactics, in addition to just the capabilities and the features, I think that's a really important consideration because at times you can kind of get so focused on all the features and all the functionality, all the cool stuff that you want to look at. But the reality is that there's a lot of change management that goes into the process as well. And so really understanding what the implication is for the end user, for the business, and what that looks like over time is really, really important call out. The next piece here, so as Ali just alluded to, perfect segue, right? But there's a huge component, which is from a tool perspective, you can kind of the way I think of this is you can either find a really good tool, and then on the other end of the spectrum, like you can also just work with a consultant to develop some type of strategy. But it's really important for, again, AI in a solution like this to help to make sure that there's some type of hybrid approach here. Because again, the reality is that the tool itself, without the change management, without the operationalization of it within a contact center, but also knowing that the business is going to constantly change over time, whatever you launch is immediately could be outdated, could be poorly adapted, isn't necessarily going to drive the most business impact over time. Maybe it's going to be great for a quarter, and then after you've continued to run the same sales process and the same tactics and only handle the same objections, it doesn't evolve and you're going to be limited in terms of what the long-term value looks like from that solution. On the other side of the spectrum, though, you also have to make sure that like there is a way of operationalizing through technology what that right strategy looks like. And so what I think about here is, again, concept being technology and the partnership. By bringing that together and really having a core focus, which is all around like, how do we view adopting a tool like this as a transformation? It's a multi-year journey for the business for the long run. We're able to really maximize what that impact and value is that a solution like that can bring to the business. So I guess, Ali, a question for you here. As you kind of went through the evaluation process and obviously understanding that this is really important to you, how did you kind of like balance your evaluation in terms of like the technical capabilities with some of the softer aspects, like being a transformation partner?
Yeah, that one's hard, right? Because you're looking for a product, right? That's going to solve whatever pain points you have as a financial institution. And so we always go into vendor management as you're choosing a vendor, not just a product. So the relationships, the roadmaps, the engagement, all of that matters. And what I've noticed too is when you have great relationships with your vendors, having hard conversations, you have to have hard conversations, and you can celebrate successes as well, but both are critical. So during our engagement, it was really important for me to make sure that does this vendor align with our values, our missions, our operating principles with our company. And so I was able to speak like with Ping, and really get to know him, not just as a business owner, but like where was his like art, right? What is his passion? And do those things align with IQs? Because you have someone running a company, right? And you want to make sure those principles align with your company's principles, because then the roadmap, all of that stuff later will automatically just come to fruition, right? Because everybody, you know, there's a lot of people that offer these same solutions, but at the end of the day, it goes back to, yeah, this is a great product, but is it going to be what IQ needs? Because credit unions are unique. We're different than different other financials that are out there in the fintech space or in the banking world, and so that uniqueness of having those softer skill sets is important to us. We're not just looking to turn on a tool that's going to replace that humanizing impact.
Yeah, I think that's such a great call out. And what you said, I think was interesting as well with respect to the roadmap and then the partnership with the executive team, right? And making sure that there is that shared vision that is equally as important as the feature set, right? Like, show me the list of capabilities. Right, like that list might look similar across a bunch of different organizations, but when you have the opportunity to actually sit down and understand, well, tell me, what are you going to focus on for the next 3 to 5 years? Let me tell you what we are focused on from a business over the next 3 to 5 years, and let's talk about how well we're aligned here. And then potentially, if there are gaps or if there are things that we think are more important that we want to prioritize in terms of that partnership, I think having that opportunity super important. So I think that's a great call out, Ali, just in terms of the vision, executive alignment, all of that really being a core part of the evaluation instead of just the technical capabilities that might exist on a sheet of paper. Excellent. The last piece here, and again, this is somewhat tangential to what we've been covering thus far, is also that I think when you think of the technical capabilities that might exist on a spreadsheet, it could be really easy, right, to just look at it and say, okay, this matches our needs, right? Like relatively new technology. Maybe you've never done something like this before, so you might not have years of requirements or a bunch of workflows that have been built out where you're saying, here's exactly what we want to satisfy. It's more of just, okay, great. This kind of sounds similar across a bunch of different organizations and companies who are talking to us about this process. What I think is important here to call out, though, is that almost summarizing a lot of what we covered thus far is that on its surface, yes, a lot of those capabilities sound and feel very similar. But the reality is that if you're not thinking of, well, is it a truly transformational partner? Are they going to be able to scale with me? Will agents use it? Or customer experience be protected and improved and enhanced over time as a result? The security guardrails and processes and certifications required and in place to help preserve and protect our data, our customers' data, et cetera, all of a sudden, like the similar capabilities that might exist don't really cover all of the underlying challenges and potential risks that could impact the business over time. And so, after spending a lot of time using things like ChatGPT over the last year or two, I always like to say it's never been easier to actually like start a company today, right? Because I can interact with ChatGPT and I ask it to build me a website and build me an application and make it look like I've got all these amazing features and these amazing capabilities. It's got to be like more challenging, I would guess, Ali, just in terms of like being on the other side as a buyer, as C-suite executive at a large organization. You're probably getting pitched things all the time. I guess how do you go about thinking of some of the risks that exist here of, hey, if we are not evaluating this the right way, we might not be aware of the potential downstream effects that it'll have on the business. And then I guess conversely, like how do you think of protecting the member experience through that motion as well? So how do you both evaluate and reduce those risks, but also make sure that as you go through this motion of bringing in new technology, you're doing it in a way that's protecting and not disrupting the most important stakeholders that you have in place today, which is your employees and then your customers.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I would say vendor due diligence is a huge topic for our company. When you're managing a lot of vendors, that can be a little inundating. And so we have a great, I think it's great if you have a project management team and a process, right? And sometimes as a vendor, not understanding that companies have those processes of doing their due diligence, and that's what makes us really great, right? And so it's just not the contact center making a decision, it's our whole organization making that decision together and making sure you're just not checking the boxes, but you're really looking at contracts, you're looking at the security, you're looking at reputation, you're looking at references. And so I think internally it's important to have a process that you do with every single vendor that you do business with or think that you want to do business with. Can it slow down the process? Yes. But then at the end of the day, when you're implementing, you're not going back thinking, oh, this was a red flag that we should have seen. Because at that point, is there any going back once you're in that mode? I think internally too, communication and transparency is huge. And so having employees that are going to be affected by this new technology, that they have buy-in as well. It's just not about executive leadership buy-in. It's literally about having those agents that are going to be using it day in and day out, having their buy-in. And so making them be part of the process. And so they feel like they are part of the process, right? So whether they're the champions, whether they are the testers, whether they're part of some meetings that you're having with that vendor, I think that creates the culture of your uniqueness of your company, right? Because I think your biggest consequence if you don't do what this member experience and vendor management and the internal operations, if you don't do all those things in sync, that's your hugest consequence is the people, your employees. Because if they don't have buy-in, all your goals of reducing friction, providing faster resolutions, more member engagement, that those things won't happen.
Yeah, I think those are really good points. And so the first, to summarize, don't get distracted by the shiny, cool new objects, right? Like run the same process, evaluate the same way that you have in the past, because all of those guardrails and the robustness of that process is there to ensure that you're doing the right type of evaluation and not just saying like the cool demo and saying, oh, yeah, great, we want that. And let's forget about all the due diligence that is associated with that. I think that's a great call out. And the second one being the stakeholders as well, making sure that they are all part of that evaluation process. I think it's really important, right? Because again, it also ties back to at the end of the day, people have to use this and they have to like it and they have to see value in it and they have to know what's in it for them. And I also think at times with technologies like AI, like there's the concept of like, oh, is this going to take my job away? And so I also think that there's an element where it's like, no, it's actually going to make your job a lot easier and you become more successful because of your ability to leverage this very innovative technology and help just make things a little bit more simple and disseminate those best practices more quickly. And now all of a sudden, everyone can be a top performer instead of that performance gap that's existed for a really long time. So I think those are both really good call outs of, again, run the normal evaluation process, even though there's probably more urgency with AI than I'd say probably with like other initiatives in terms of every business knows that they need it. Make sure that you're doing your due diligence across from start to finish. And then number two is making sure that there's a lot of stakeholders involved in that process, potentially whether it's IT, whether it's legal teams, whether it's the end users themselves, making sure that everyone feels part of that journey as well. Excellent. Cool. Do you want to talk a little bit, Ali, just in terms of how you guys overall have put together a little bit of your evaluation process in general?
Yeah, so I think it's important that you create like a scorecard. And so we created an evaluation scorecard ranking all of the vendors. Our top topics were obviously accuracy and performance. How well does this AI capture and analyze our interactions? Because every business case has their different interactions, right? And so being a financial institution, being a credit union, is it really capturing and analyzing what we want it to do? The scalability and flexibility, can it grow with us? Or is it just a moment in time fix? And so for us, scalability was huge. AI is moving super fast. And so every day it's constantly changing and improving. And so we wanted to make sure that it's going to be able to do things for us, not just in 2025, but can it just continue to do those things for us in 2030? Agent experience is always top of mind. Does it simplify the workflows or does it convolute it even more? Because you look at the workforce today, and like you said, you use ChatGPT, people have their smartphones, and the workforce is expecting that we have this technology in place so that they're not being cumbersome by the tedious like tasks, right? So I feel like to be a competitive employer, that you need to have these technologies in place as well. And then the other thing that we looked at was what data insights and reporting tools were available to us. So you can have the tool, right, Brandon, and it does its thing, but are you gaining any actionables out of the input that AI is providing you? So we, all in all, like when you build out this scorecard and you look at the numbers and you score each vendor through this process, it really gives you an idea of where people rank. Because as we go through RFPs, there's a lot of information. People are, like you said, the shiny objects are all in your face. They're telling you all the things that you want to hear. But at the end of the day, for us as a credit union, it's about people helping people. And is this system really going to enhance the member experience?
I love that. And I love the saying too, people helping people, right? And like that being what it's all about. And again, I think the evaluation scorecard that you guys have put together is fantastic and like honestly like very innovative too, right? Because it is a new technology and there aren't necessarily like decades of experience of like, okay, great, here's what an RFP has looked like for a CRM for the last 25 years. It is a new thing that you probably had to build that from scratch, I would presume, and take some time to and thought to put into it of how do we weight each of these respective categories? How do we feel confident that we are weighting them appropriately based on what we need today, but also to your point of like over the next 10 years, are we also investing in the right partner to help get us to where we want to be as a business? And so that's super insightful. And so thank you for kind of just walking us through how you guys approach the evaluation there as well. Excellent. So from a Cresta perspective, what I would think about here is that in addition to everything that you just shared, Ali, which is fantastic in terms of the evaluation scorecard, these are the things that if someone were to ask me as part of the evaluation process of like, hey, from a Cresta point of view, what do you think would be really important for us to look at within different tools? In addition to everything that we've covered thus far, I think a few of the things to call out here first and foremost is around transcription accuracy. This is one at times where I think many people think that there might be table stakes, but there's a huge difference between 85%, 90%, 93%, because essentially what that means is that if we're getting individual words wrong, we might not be detecting what that conversation was about, what that agent should have done, what that agent actually did. And it kind of impacts the full end-to-end process, right? If the insights that are provided become less relevant, less valuable, the assistance and the guidance that are being provided to agents become a little bit less valuable, but potentially more noisy as well. The coaching, the reliance or ability to use the tool for coaching, you can't trust it and you have to listen to it. And it doesn't really save you the time and it doesn't drive the efficiency that you might have thought or expected there as well. So transcription and the quality of transcription, super important. The other piece that I'd call out here, and this kind of gets in the next one, but like transcription is not a one size fits all model, right? Like Ali, you I'm sure would attest to this, but like the conversations that your agents are having with your customers probably very different than what Verizon's agents are saying to their customers, or what United, their agents might be saying to their customers. And so transcription, the quality itself, very important. Also, the ability to refine that and fine tune it for your unique conversations to make it more tailored to your business, really, really important part of the evaluation here. The second piece is making sure that it's the right model for the right application. And this isn't just, hey, how do we customize a model to make it feel and look like it's uniquely trained on your conversations? Yes, that's a component, but also how do we make sure that we're using the right models based on the specific applications? So if we're trying to summarize what your knowledge material is like and present an answer to an agent, well, that might leverage a different custom trained model than transcribing the conversation and using the ASR transcription model. Or if we're trying to determine, well, how do we build behavior detection based on what is or isn't happening in conversation? Again, that might be a different model summarizing what that conversation was about. And so for this, I think it's just really understanding, hey, AI is a highly innovative space, it's evolving very quickly and very rapidly. Do we have confidence that the models that are being used are going to be the appropriate ones for our business? And it's also going to understand the nuances within our business. And so with these specific actions that we're looking to leverage AI for, is it going to help to provide high level of accuracy, but also that latency that might be needed to help to make sure that, hey, if someone's hitting us with an objection, we better tell that agent how to handle that objection when that customer is still on the phone, not after that conversation has ended. The next piece here, just real-time architecture. So again, everything that we've covered from understanding the insights to being able to coach, and Ali, as you mentioned, right, over time, competitors are going to be doing things differently. And so how do we quickly iterate and evolve what your best practices look like? All of this becomes a lot more valuable when you're able to do all of that in real time. And so that's where, how do we take the insights, make action from it? That is going to be incredibly important and a huge component of how to evaluate all of these different tools that you might see here. The final two pieces, human in the loop. And so again, this is where, how do we continue to learn and train based on what's happening in conversations today, tomorrow, in the future, to optimize the impact and the outcomes that we're driving. And so the way that I typically think about this is also very much oriented towards the long-term partnership of, are you going to have that AI solution who has the partner who shows up every week, immerses themselves in our business, who starts to actually understand and learn about, well, what are our top performers doing, and how is that potentially different over time, and how do we devise either coaching techniques and strategies and have a real-time agent assist tool help to become an extension of that coaching to help to enforce it in those conversations themselves. But also, what else might we learn that we maybe didn't have as part of our coaching process, or as part of our sales process, or even existing within the playbook today? How do we continue to make sure that there is a human in the loop? So anytime someone's getting credit for performing a behavior, or conversely not getting credit for performing it, do we also have the ability to refine that and fine tune that over time, so that as some of those actions change, we're approaching and supporting it the right way? Last and final piece, everything that we've been talking about thus far, of the transcription super accurate, we have these fantastic models that are in very low latency applications, providing really good insight and coaching and guidance and telling us what's happening within those conversations all across the board in real time. That's a lot that we can learn about our business. And so how do we also then take all of that and inject it into the systems that we already have in place today to help make them more powerful and more useful? And so even if it's someone's called back for a third time, I want to go into that system and I want to see what their past two interactions were. Show me the summaries for that. Or I want to understand more broadly, we had 20% more volume last week. What was the reason for that spike in volume? Those types of insights, that's where it becomes really powerful to, again, not only silo all of that into a solution that could help to tell you all of those meaningful and impactful things about a business, but how do we also make sure that it has the opportunity to take all those insights and, again, further inject them into the existing systems and processes to help make those tools more powerful as well. I'll pause here. Ali, just a couple of quick questions in terms of your process and then kind of what I've shared here on this slide as well. From your point of view, we often, when we're talking about AI, we're saying smart and intelligent and all the things that you can do and learn about your business. But like, what from your perspective, either is from the evaluation or the scorecard itself, what were you looking for in terms of like intelligence with a tool in alignment with the business needs?
Yeah, so I would say like your summary of all those points is a lot that IQ really our experience with when you think about selecting a vendor and looking at your specific industry needs. I think that's what's really important when you're talking about AI and the accuracy, because like you said, the AI is as smart as you develop it, right? And so you're creating those enablements, those blocks, those triggers. And so it's important that you create it without losing that uniqueness to your brand, your company, your members, your staff. And so I think it's taking like you said, you can go in and you can do your Excel sheet because this is like the process that we're in the right. We think we have it, but then you have to take in like the softer skills and how do you ingrain those things into an AI software, right? And I think that's where your agents come in and they have that human factor. And so I think it's important that you always think about technology, but still with the emphasis of that humanizing factor, so that you don't lose the uniqueness of what your brand stands for.
Yeah, I like that. So in effect, it needs to be intelligent insofar as it is customizable and configurable and unique to your business, right? It's not just, it can't be super smart, but it in one size fits all. It needs to make sure that it's somehow able to be modeled into truly understanding and grasping the nuances that might exist within your business. Were there anything outside of what's on the list here? Were there anything in terms of compliance or data security or any requirements that existed like that that had stronger or higher weighting as part of your evaluation from some of the capabilities that I have here on the slide?
Not having like an IT hat, but knowing like I would say our security and compliance when we are looking at a vendor, it has to adhere to all like the regulatory requirements. And so making sure that we did our due diligence, and that's why I think our project management process and bringing in those correct stakeholders, which is IT, to make sure that we're doing business with a reputable company, right? And that they are doing the right things to keep our members safe. I think that's a huge component is when you're working with a vendor and they have access to your members' information, that they're also doing their due diligence on their side, and the importance of protecting our members.
Yeah, that's such a great call out. And probably something that we haven't even covered that much as part of today's webinar, but we covered a lot of the features and capabilities, but also the partner aspect. But I think what you're alluding to here is super interesting in that I think there's two different types of audiences that at times as part of a technical evaluation, when you think of IT security, now the emergence of like AI governance, task forces and things like that, which is a whole nother webinar on its own. I think when evaluating vendors, and I think one area in which we've actually done a pretty good job on this is that I think there's two different audiences for some of that material. One, as you just mentioned, right, like not sitting in IT and not necessarily, at least always wearing an IT hat. We also have to make sure that like it's easy to digest and consume and help to instill trust and confidence and how to understand some of those compliance regulations, those types of certifications that are really, really important, even if it's not necessarily your core competency or your job, right? to make sure that those are all validated, but how do we help to articulate and understand why that's important, where this platform versus other platforms might sit in terms of their maturity from a regulatory compliance perspective, especially in an industry like financial services that is probably more on the heavily regulated side than some other industries. And I think the second piece, though, is then not only how do we help to guide and coach um, the non-technical stakeholders through the evaluation process, but then how do you also back it up? And so when you do get in the room with IT, with security, they want to go deep and do a deep dive into all the regulations and compliance, and all the certifications that exist. You're also able to support that. I think that's really important. So there's almost two dimensions to the regulatory component. Again, one is how do we make it easy to understand and digest so that if you get questions as the evaluator of this technology, you can answer them, but then you also have confidence that if we get the very technical people into a room together, that we're going to be able to work through that motion as well.
Yes, exactly. It's
Awesome.
definitely a team effort, right? Then that's why you have all those different departments that have their specialties, and it's coming together, being collaborative and understanding, like at the end of the day, the member experience and how does this impact?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So last couple slides here before we open it up for Q&A at the end. Want to just talk about general best practices here again. As part of the technology evaluation process, like how do we think of framing up, okay, cool, we've evaluated the right platform, we're excited, we're eager to get going. How do we even get started with that motion? At a very high level here, kind of just broke this down into three different components. One is from a prioritization perspective. As we've discussed it, there's so much that you can do for agents, for the coaches, for managers and supervisors, for operationalizing quality management, for insights and understanding what's happening across the business, even the longer term view of AI agents alongside human agents in a contact center. There's so many different places to get started. What I always find to be important is that like finding some of the quick wins. And what's important about the quick wins is that they're not necessarily just like the low hanging fruit or the easy things that we can do along the journey. It's very intentional of how do we devise a sequential implementation delivery motion that allows us to maximize value over time. And so I think with this, what's really important is, hey, we found the tool, it meets our requirements, we're eager and excited to get started. Having a game plan, which is also great. How do we actually get started? What does that look like over time? As we've been talking about, with this being such a transformational journey, it's a multi-year timeline that we're thinking about and talking about. How do we set the right expectations on in this first quarter after it launches? What do we expect in terms of impact, in terms of value? What do we expect in Q2 and Q3? Having that game plan of prioritizing the deployment to maximize value over time, really, really important. The next piece is phasing this out. And so again, there's a lot of change management that goes into this, right? Like you could be telling agents what to do, you can be learning about the business, you can be improving and enhancing coaching. There has to be intention behind the order in which those are all approached. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to say, hey, agents, we're going to go tell you to do all this stuff in conversations. And then you're going to meet with your managers, and your managers aren't going to have any clue about what those things are. And so there's no accountability. And so that's going to slow down adoption, diminish usage. And so here, making sure that we have that phased rollout, which is, again, very much thinking about how do we do this in a logical order. And then item two is also how do we start to make sure that if we launch it and we realize that agents are already performing this, they don't need that reminder. How do we quickly adopt and iterate to, again, make sure that we're focused on the right things as we learn more about the business over time as well? And the last piece here is that, especially with AI, like, and again, such an iterative process that it's really important to think about, unlike, again, I don't know, I'm bashing CRMs today, but unlike launching a CRM, it's not necessarily, hey, this is launched, this is done. We can come back and revisit it in 6 months and 9 months and a year, check in and see what's going on. On day two, we're going to learn things after that first day of being live. And again, Ali, to your point earlier, I think what's really important is how do we help to make sure that everything that's happening with the customers today, that's going to be changing. Everything that your competitors are doing is going to be evolving. And so you have to be very agile as a business in making sure that the process and the policies that you have in place are able to also quickly adapt over time. You're going to have to even move faster than everyone else to help to make sure that you're staying in the lead. And so I think for this one as well, it's making sure that the launch, the completion, the is the start of the journey, not the end of the process. And so I'll pause there for a second, but Ali, I guess in terms of your feedback on this motion and how you guys were thinking about your AI journey, how does this kind of align with your expectations and the way that you guys were kind of thinking about, okay, cool, completion of evaluation, great. Step one, step two is now thinking about, well, how do we actually roll this out and deploy this?
Yeah, it's a perfect, when you talk about CRMs, I'm laughing just because with our CRM system, since it is homegrown, we treat it just how we're treating this implementation. We're never done. It's constantly evolving. We're constantly modernizing it based on the involvement of our staff. Voice of the employee is huge for us because they're the ones using the CRM system. So if it's not meeting their needs, they're not going to be able to make sure that they're providing the right products and services to our members. And so we took that same approach with this. And like you said, the quick wins, nothing is easy. This whole process has been so much more complex than what we thought. And what I love about our staff is that they are literally like engaged. They're not getting frustrated because it does take a different intellect to do this process of enablement and building. And so, like I said, internal buy-in is critical. You got to trust the technology, and then critical early success adoption. And so we have literally been talking to staff prior to even starting this project, letting them know, like, what does this mean to you, right? Because change management is huge. The change of fear, right, is the fear of unknown, fear of my job, out of my comfort zone. Am I performing the way I should be performing? Now they're gonna know, I'm gonna know. And so staff's biggest fear, though, is that it's going to take away their unique personality and that human element. And so bringing them along the way and showing them brief little videos of how it's going to only enhance that human element. But really we're going to be starting with the automated Q&A. So it's going to give us immediate insights, like you said, with call quality and coaching opportunities that obviously enhance the member experience. And then from there, we're going to scale gradually. And so when you look at the contact centers that are going to be implementing this, we're going to deploy it throughout 3 different contact centers, but we're going to do one at a time. Our member support department has the highest volume of calls. That's where our members, that's our biggest volume of our member channel. And then we'll launch to our loss prevention department, obviously the impact on mitigating our losses and enhancing that experience as well. And then our remote delivery, and they're a high sales touch point. And so they open new accounts, they do our loan volume. And so each of these departments have different roles, different job families and outcomes, but they're going to be able to learn from each other from each use case and understand what implementation success looked like for each one as we roll them out, and learn from them and create best practices to basically further expand their area. And then from there, we're going to continuous improvement. Like you said, it's never, like, to me, this is never done. We're in the beginning stages today in developing and implementing those processes, but it's ongoing monitoring, refinement, and those are essential for long-term success.
Awesome. I love everything that you just shared. Again, early involvement of stakeholders at the beginning, super important. The intelligent phase deployment. And so I think you're spot on, right? With like, how do we, and I hope that over time to contact center 2 and 3, becomes even more efficient, right? Because of all the learnings from the first one. And so there's the accelerating compounding impact of like, great, well, it becomes easier to deploy it. We'll learn things, we can adopt and adapt. And so I think that will help to encourage that faster adoption, engagement, impact timeline over the long run as well. Final question, I know we're coming up on time here. There's one thing that you wish someone had told you before you kicked off your process of evaluating and looking for the right technology partner, what would that have been?
Just one. So I would say don't get caught up in the hype, whether that's like the shiny objects or the product itself. I would say focus on the real tangible AI use cases that solve actual business problems. And I would say AI is the most successful when it complements the human teams. It just doesn't replace processes.
Love it. Love it. Ali, thank you so much. Appreciate you embarking on this journey in partnership with Cresta, but also spending nearly an hour with me here, just kind of talking about the motion and process that you went through here. Super helpful and super insightful feedback that you've shared. So thank you so much for sharing that with me and then everyone else here as well.
Thank you for having me. It's going to be a great journey, and then we're just getting started.
Awesome. Awesome. Cool. Well, finally here, as mentioned at the beginning, this is chapter 3 of the 4-chapter book on AI maturity blueprint. And so in that 4th and final chapter, as Ali mentioned to you earlier, a super important part of it is how do we establish executive buy-in. So in the next series, we'll have John Donovan, former president of AT&T, as well as Sai Vivek, who is the current chief customer officer here at Cresta, participating in this session, kind of walking through how do we tie initiatives to business priorities, what is the psychology behind the leadership mindset and decision-making process of evaluating and understanding how to select the right tools for this, and then how do we also go about presenting the business case. So a lot more to come as part of the series, but Ali, again, thank you so much for the time. Really, really appreciate you sharing this with everyone and kind of what your evaluation process looked like. And thank you again for the partnership with Cresta.
Thanks for the opportunity. It's been great having the discussion with you, Brandon.